Greetings, brothers and sisters in Christ and YouTube visitors. I'd like to read an article to you today. It's called We Are Living 1984 by Victor David Hanson. You might remember that novel by George Orwell. I read it back around 1982, a few years before the significant year of 1984. I think George Orwell was a little early, but I think I'm probably going to agree with this article. I haven't even read it yet, so I'm just going to read it to you right now because it came from a very credible source. So it might surprise me a little bit, but you know, you should be willing to learn something new and be open to new ideas. So let's go for it. All right. Supreme Court, and they have a picture in this article of Supreme Court nominee Judge Brett Kavanaugh, as he's listening to the Senate Judiciary Committee confirmation hearing on Capitol Hill. All right, this is dated, article is actually dated the 25th of September, so a few days ago. Truth, due process, evidence, rights of the accused, all are swept aside in pursuit of the progressive agenda. George Orwell's 1949 dystopian novel 1984 is no longer fiction. We are living in it right now. Google techies plan to massage internet searches to emphasize correct thinking. A member of the so-called deep state, in an anonymous op-ed, brags that its resistance is undermining an elected president. The FBI, CIA, DOJ, and NSC were all weaponized in 2016 to ensure that the proper president would be elected, the choice adjudicated by properly progressive ideology. Wearing a wire is now redefined as simply flipping on an iPhone and recording your boss, boy or girlfriend or coworkers. But never has the reality that we are living in a surreal age been clearer than during the strange cycles of Christine Blasey Ford's accusations against Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh. In Orwell's world of 1984, Oceania, there is no longer a sense of due process, free inquiry, rules of evidence, and cross-examination, much less a presumption of innocence until proven guilty. Instead, regimented ideology, the supremacy of state power to control all aspects of one's life, to enforce a fossilized idea of mandated quality, warps everything from the use of language to private life. Senator Dianne Feinstein, and the other Democrats on the Senate Judiciary Committee had long sought to destroy the Brett Kavanaugh nomination. Much of their paradoxical furor over his nomination arises from the boomeranging of their own past political blunders, such as when Democrats ended the filibuster on judicial nominations in 2013. They also canonized the so-called 1992 Biden rule, which holds that the Senate should not consider confirming the Supreme Court nomination of a lame duck president, for example, George H.W. Bush, in an election year. Rejecting Kavanaugh proved a hard task given that he had a long record of judicial opinions and writings, and there was nothing much in them that would indicate anything but a sharp mind, much less any ideological, racial, or sexual intolerance. His personal life was impeccable, his family admirable. Kavanaugh was no combative Robert Bork, but congenial, and he patiently answered all the questions asked of him, despite constant demonstrations and pre-planned street theater interruptions from the Senate gallery, and often obnoxious grandstanding by I am Spartacus Democratic senators. So Kavanaugh was going to be confirmed unless a bombshell revelation derailed the vote, and so we got a bombshell. Weeks earlier, Senator Dianne Feinstein had received a written allegation against Kavanaugh of sexual battery by an accuser who wished to remain anonymous. Feinstein sat on it for nearly 2 months, probably because she thought the charges were either spurious, that is, false, or unprovable. Until a few days ago, she mysteriously refused to release the full text of the redacted complaint, and she said she does not know whether the very accusations that she purveyed are believable. Was she reluctant to memorialize the accusations by formally submitting them to the Senate Judiciary Committee, because doing so makes Ford subject to possible criminal liability if the charges prove demonstrably untrue. The gambit was clearly to use the charges as a last chance effort to stop the nomination, but only if Kavanaugh survived the cross-examination during the confirmation hearing. Then, in extremis, Feinstein finally referenced the charge, hoping to keep it anonymous, but at the same time to hint of its serious nature and thereby to force a delay in the confirmation. Think something McCarthy-esque, like I have here in my hand the name. All right. Delay would mean the confirmation vote could be put off until after the midterm election, and a few jeopardized Democratic senators in Trump's states would not have to go on record voting no on Kavanaugh. Or the insidious innuendos, rumor, and gossip that Kavanaugh would help to bleed him to death by 1,000 leaks, and by association, tank Republican chances at retaining the House. Republicans may or may not lose the House over the confirmation circus, but they most surely will lose their base, and with it the Congress, if they do not confirm Kavanaugh. Feinstein's anonymous trick did not work, so pressure mounted to reveal or leak Ford's identity and thereby force an Anita Hill-like inquest that might at least show old white men, Republican senators, as insensitive to a vulnerable and victimized woman. The problem, of course, was that under traditional notions of jurisprudence, Ford's allegations simply were not provable. But America soon discovered that civic and government norms no longer follow the Western legal tradition. In Orwellian terms, Kavanaugh was now at the mercy of the state. He was tagged with sexual battery at first by an anonymous accuser, and then, upon revelation of her identity, by a left-wing political activist, psychology professor, and her more left-wing, more politically active lawyer. Newspeak and doublethink. Statute of limitations, ? It does not exist. An incident 36 years ago apparently is as fresh today as it was when Kavanaugh was 17 and Ford 15. Presumption of innocence? ? Not at all. Kavanaugh is accused and thereby guilty. The accuser faces no doubt. In Orwellian America, the accused must first present his defense, even though he does not quite know what he's being charged with. Then the accuser and her legal team pore over his testimony to prepare her accusation. Evidence? ? That too is a fossilized concept. Ford could name neither the location of the alleged assault nor the date or time. She had no idea how she arrived or left the scene of the alleged crime. There's no physical evidence of the attack, and such lacunae in her memory, this is a word new to me, L-A-C-U-N-A-E, in her memory mattered no longer at all. Details? Again, such notions are counter-revolutionary. Ford said to her therapist 6 years ago, 30 years after her alleged incident, that there were 4 would-be attackers, at least as recorded in the therapist's notes. But now she has claimed that there were only 2 assaulters, Kavanaugh and a friend. In truth, all 4 people, now including a female, named in her accusations as either assaulters or witnesses, have insisted that they have no knowledge of the event, much less of wrongdoing, wherever and whenever Ford claims the act took place. That they deny knowledge is at times used as proof by Ford's lawyers that the event, 36 years, was traumatic. An incident at 15 is so seared into her lifelong memory that at 52, Ford has no memory of any of the events or details surrounding that unnamed day, except that she is positive that 17-year-old Brett Kavanaugh, along with 2 others, was harassing her. She has no idea where or when she was assaulted, but she still assures that Kavanaugh and his friend Mark Judge were drunk, but that she and others merely had only the proverbial teenage, quote, 1 beer. Most people are more likely to know where they were at a party than the exact number of alcoholic beverages they consumed, but not so much about either after 36 years. Testimony? No longer relevant. Doesn't matter that Kavanaugh and the other alleged suspect both deny the allegations and have no memory of being in the same locale with Ford 36 years ago. In sum, all the supposed partiers, both male and female, now swear under penalty of felony that they have no memory of any of the incidents that Ford claims occurred so long ago, that Ford cannot produce a single witness to confirm her narrative or refute theirs is likewise of no concern. So far, she has singularly not submitted a formal affidavit or given a deposition that would be subject to legal exposure if untrue. Again, the ideological trumps the empirical. All women must be believed is the testament, and individuals bow to the collective, except as in Orwell's Animal Farm. There are ideological exceptions, such as Bill Clinton, Keith Ellison, Sherrod Brown, and Joe Biden. The slogan of Ford's psychodrama is, all women must be believed, but some women are more believable than others. That an assertion becomes fact due to the prevailing ideology and gender of the accuser marks the destruction of our entire system of justice. Rights of the accused, ? They too do not exist. In the American version of 1984, the accuser, aka the more ideologically correct party, dictates to authorities the circumstances under which she will be investigated and cross-examined. She will demand all sorts of special considerations of privacy and exemptions. Kavanaugh will be forced to return and face cameras and the public to prove that he was not then and has never been since a sexual assaulter. In our 1984 world, the accused is considered guilty if merely charged, and the accuser is a victim who can ruin a life but must not under any circumstance be made uncomfortable in proving her charges. Doublespeak abounds. Victim solely refers to the accuser, not the accused, who one day was Brett Kavanaugh, a brilliant jurist and model citizen, and the next morning woke up transformed into some sort of Kafkaesque cockroach. Kafkaesque. All right. Cockroach. The media and political operatives went in a nanosecond from charging that she was groped and assaulted to the claim that she was, quote, raped. Yeah, you see, rape is forced upon you, and it's not consensual usually. I mean, it's not consensual. It's against your will, whereas consensual sex, which may have been the case, is not as bad an offense. So they had to make it a rape and impugn Kavanaugh's character. Of course, the real objective here, I believe, is because Kavanaugh is conservative and he may overturn Roe versus Wade 1973, which gave a woman the right to kill her unborn child. Now, the deep state, the progressives, as evil as they are, really have an agenda to promote their New World Order and to promote Orwell's 1984 vision of the future, his utopia, where we lose our freedom, where wrong is right and right is wrong, where up is down and down is up. You know, it's really a world that I've been saying proves more and more that Satan has been let loose, and his chain is getting longer and longer. So this is why we see crime abounding, we see our freedoms disappearing, we see the middle class disappearing, which is part of the communist platform, the centralized bank system, the state or public schools, government schools more properly called, and the progressive income tax. While the deep state, the 1% global elite, the billionaires that run everything, people like Soros and Kissinger and the Bush family and the Clintons and so on, they get wealthier and wealthier, while you probably are getting poorer and poorer. If you haven't lost your job, you probably will in the near future as robots begin to replace various positions and jobs. All right, continuing the article. Ford should be believed or not believed on the basis of evidence, not her position, gender, or politics. I certainly did not believe Joe Biden simply because he was a U.S. senator when, as Neil Kinnock's doppelganger, he claimed that he came from a long line of coal miners, any more than I believe that Senator Cory Booker really had a gangbanger Socratic confidant named T-Bone, or that would-be Senator Richard Blumenthal was an anguished Vietnam combat vet, or that Senator Elizabeth Warren was a Native American. Do we need a 25th Amendment for unhinged senators? Wanting to believe something from someone who is ideologically correct does not translate into confirmation of truth. Ford, supposedly in her originally anonymous accusation, had insisted that she had sought medical treatment for her assault. The natural assumption is that such a term would mean that soon after the attack, the victim sought a doctor's or emergency room's help to address either her physical or mental injuries. Records might therefore be a powerful refutation of Kavanaugh's denials. But medical treatment now means that 30 years after the alleged assault, Ford sought counseling for some sort of, quote, relationship or, quote, companion therapy, or what might legitimately be termed marriage counseling. And in the course of her discussions with her therapist about her marriage, she first spoke of her alleged assault 3 decades earlier. She did not then name Kavanaugh to her therapist, whose notes are at odds with Ford's current vision. Well, this is a little longer than I expected. Let me just go a little bit further. Memory holes. Okay. Then we come to Orwell's idea of memory holes, or mechanisms to wipe clean inconvenient facts that disrupt official ideological narratives. Shortly after Ford was named, suddenly her prior well-publicized and self-referential social media revelations vanished, as if she never even held her minor league but confident pro-Sanders, anti-Trump opinions. And much of her media and social media accounts were erased as well. Similarly, one moment the New York Times, just coming off an embarrassing lie in reporting that UN Ambassador Nikki Haley had ordered new $50,000 office drapes on the government dime, reported that Kavanaugh, alleged accomplice Mark Judge, had confirmed Ford's allegation. Indeed, in a sensational scoop, according to the Times, Judge told the Judiciary Committee that he does remember the episode and has nothing more to say. In fact, Judge told the committee the very opposite, that he does not remember the episode. 40 minutes later, the Times' embarrassing narrative vanished down the memory hole. The online versions of some of the yearbooks of Ford's high school from the early 1980s vanished as well. At times, they had seemed to take a perverse pride in the reputation of the all-girls school for underage drinking, carousing, and, on rare occasions, passing out at parties. Such activities were supposed to be the monopoly and condemnatory landscape of the frat boy and spoiled white kid Kavanaugh, and certainly not the environment in which the noble Ford navigated. 17-year-old Kavanaugh was to play the role of a falling down drunk. Ford, with impressive powers of memory of an event 36 years past, assures us that as a circumspect 15-year-old, she had only one beer. A former teenage friend of Ford sent out a flurry of social media postings, allegedly confirming that Ford's ordeal was well known to her friends in 1982, and so her assault narrative must therefore be confirmed. Then, when challenged on some of her incoherent details, schools are not in session during summertime, and Ford is on record as not telling anyone of the incident for 30 years. She mysteriously claimed that she no longer could stand by her earlier assertions, which likewise stood vanished from her social media account. Apparently, she had assumed that in 2018, Oceania, ideologically correct citizens merely needed to lodge an accusation and it would be believed, without any obligation on her part to substantiate her charges. When a second accuser, Deborah Ramirez, followed Ford 7 days later to allege another sexual incident with the teenage Kavanaugh at Yale 35 years ago, it was no surprise that she followed the now normal Orwellian boilerplate. None of those whom she named as witnesses could either confirm her charges or even remember the alleged event. She had altered her narrative after consultations with lawyers and handlers. She too confesses to underage drinking during the alleged event. She too is currently a social and progressive political activist. The only difference from Ford's narrative is that Ramirez's accusation was deemed not credible enough to be reported even by the New York Times, which recently retracted false stories about witness Mark Judge in the Ford case, and which falsely reported that UN Ambassador Nikki Haley had charged the government for $50,000 office drapes. As in 1984,